All right, here we go. Welcome everybody to Book Think number 14. I have very special guest here today, Jose from Jose's Amazing Worlds, and thank you so much for coming on, Jose, to discuss books.
No. It's my absolute pleasure. It always feels really great when someone invites you over to have a book chat. It's like, oh, people want to talk to me. That's always a surprise.
Absolutely. So anybody who hasn't yet checked out Jose's channel, please do. I'll have a link below. He does some great interviews on there, and with a lot of different variety of authors and other personages in industries, and some reviews, great reviews too. So check those out. But
Some of them.
but Jose has done us the favor of picking the book or book series to talk about today, and he surprised me with one of my favorites from my young adulthood, the Dragonlance Legends trilogy.
So I'm quite glad that we've got the same edition, but mine's in Spanish. But it's got the same covers, the mythical Larry Elmo covers.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
So they kept the artwork
as they should.
That's right. So the first time I read them, I got these ones, and then, God, about maybe 12 years ago, discarded on my local train station, I found the annotated omnibus edition of Legends by Wizards of the Coast. So I've got that as well in English, which I've read a couple of times.
Nice. That's pretty cool. All right. So you read these a couple times. When was the first time you read them?
I must have been, I don't know, maybe 14, so 30 years ago or something like that. It was definitely somewhere in the mid-90s. Yeah. I was heavily into Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition.
Okay, yeah.
And then, strangely enough, I didn't read Chronicles first. I read Legends first. And one of the guys I played with, he lent me the first book of Legends, and it was I was instantly hooked.
Wow, that's amazing, because I was gonna announce the caveat that this is the second trilogy of the Dragonlance series, the first trilogy being Chronicles, and this was the second one. But that's quite amazing that you read this one first.
I didn't know anything about. At the time, you're 14. I knew next to nothing about fantasy literature, and the fact that there were these novels based on this game that I loved was like mind blowing to me. And then when I finished Legends, I discovered Chronicles, and it was like, there's more. Like, I was so excited. And then my local library in Spain had the Spanish editions of whatever was published at the time. So it was Chronicles, Legends. Some of the preludes were available at the time as well.
Oh, the short stories and stuff.
Yeah, or no, they did a whole series of, like, I think it was 6 or 9 books where they gave you the backstory of each of the heroes of the lands.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
So they had some of those. So I soaked those up. They had the appendices, which seems to have been lost in time. And then, someone in my class they did, I don't know what it's called in English, but they did an edition of all the artwork that was created for the series into this kind of A4 or whatever it is between A4 and A3, like all the prints by all the great artists that illustrated Dragonlance, Larry Elmore and Jeff Easley and all these people. Yeah. And we used to pass that book around our gaming group in order to never to return it to the owner. Like we screwed this guy up for years because we were just like soaking all the artwork and really loving Dragonlance.
Yeah. Well, my own history was I first read this series came out in 1986, and I started reading Dragonlance in 1987, late 87 or 88. So they were all out in the shelves. But the amazing thing about these covers, I think, are just a great design. They really stood out on the shelves. And I love the logo. I love the word Dragonlance, how it's incorporated in this great design, and the artwork, of course, by Larry Elmore was second to none. Uh-oh, what we got here?
Let's try not to fall down.
Yeah.
It's a Larry Elmore print signed. I don't think you can see the dedication because of the light.
Yeah,
it's dedicated by Larry Elmore. I bought it for myself for Christmas.
Oh my, that is outstanding.
And it's the title's print is Father's Worry. So this is when, in the second generation, Palin, Caramon's son, decides to become a wizard, and Caramon doesn't support his decision. But as the dutiful father that he is, he goes along to support his son all the way. And so that kind of resonates with me. And I ordered the print, and Larry Elmore dedicated it, and he said, he says something like, "To Jose, a father's worry is never without rewards."
Nice.
Dragonlance means a lot to me from a personal reason perspective. So.
Yeah, I can see that. That makes sense. And it's funny because like Dragonlance was my first foray into fantasy literature. That's what I started with. And I didn't, other than the Dungeons and Dragons actual rule books, that's what I started with. I found when I found Dragonlance, I was like, wow, like you, I was like, wow, that's based on my game. And as a young man, it's like, that's all you need really to get into stuff like the reading, is that connection. And that's what did it. And I know the first Chronicles are kind of looked down upon a little bit because of their basically being a role-playing game in novel form, especially the first book. But I think they really kicked it up a notch with this series, with Legends. I found that this series really explored the relationship between a pair of twin brothers like nothing else I've seen before. And I just and the sacrifices that they'll make for each other, and the sacrifices that they will whether they think they're doing it on purpose or not, they're still doing it, and the things that they go through. And I love the titles. It's very Shakespearean, like Time of the Twins, War of the Twins, and Test of the Twins. It's it has that very grandiose feel to it. And I think they really knocked it out of the park with this second series.
Yeah, I mean, and this is why I rate it very highly above Chronicles. Chronicles was written to sell and support the Dungeons and Dragons role-playing game.
Right.
That was the idea. What TSR didn't realize at the time is that the novels were selling as much as the RPG. So I think at one point, all the novels line of TSR accounted for almost half of the revenue, but they never actually realized. And for anyone watching this, I recommend the book called Slaying the Dragon by Ben Riggs, which I interviewed in my channel. He's a Dungeons and Dragons historian, and he covers that bit of history from the creation of the game up to the takeover by Wizards of the Coast, and how like I said, the novels line sold as much as the actual RPG, but they always thought about it as a kind of secondary product.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
it was only there to support the game, when in actual fact, Dragonlance sold millions of copies.
Yeah, it turned around. The games end up supporting the novels rather than the novels supporting the games.
That's right. Right.
That's fun.
And I agree with you, because Chronicles was just, there were a lot of dungeons and not enough dragons with the game, so they created the world of Dragonlance to have more dragon presence. So it was this game, and then I think with Legends they honed in on this amazing character of Riesling.
Yeah.
And instead of writing an adventure, I think they really took a deep dive into the psyche of this character and the relationship between the brothers. And I think the themes are super powerful in this trilogy, and they really have something to say other than just tell a story of, fantasy epic proportions, which we still have in any case.
Right. So when you originally were getting into this, did you have any reservations at all? Were you worried about liking it
No, from the word go. I mean,
from the word go?
and once again, I I don't think I had. I talked about it before. As a kid, I don't think I had anything pathological, but I was really afraid of losing at games. I hated playing games with my friends where I could lose. Not big. I think it was something about. I was more afraid of being mocked or being made fun of for losing. So I hated playing Monopoly. I hated playing competitive games with my friends. So when Dungeons and Dragons came around, the RPG, it's like, this is so me. Yeah, we're all together. We are working together. It really, spoke to me, and it was made for me. And I just played the hell out of the game. Friday would arrive, school finishes at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And from 4 o'clock on Friday until Sunday, 8 in the evening, we will just be playing the game.
Wow, that's incredible.
I think kind of socially is what kind of helped me and sort of saved me a little bit without getting too deep into it. But so the novels, as soon as there's a black robe wizard and there's time travel and dragons and flying citadels, I just loved it. I loved it, and I still do to this day.
Yeah, I ate it up when I first read these, and like I said, it's what got me into fantasy reading. These novels, and reading in general, because I wasn't much of a reader before like 18. I wasn't much of a reader at all as a kid, and it was these books that really opened up my world to reading in general. Not mind just fantasy, but everything.
I read a lot. I've always read a lot, but I think for me, and maybe for many people, they are sort of the transitional book from reading children's books to longer, more sort of. I mean, they are not necessarily adult books, but they straddle that in between when you're a 12-year-old,
Yeah.
and you're just reading maybe 100-page books.
No, I think they're a young adult before they had that terminology,
Possibly.
And when they say young adult, I mean like between like 16 and 30 or 14 and 30 or whatever, that's the range that I would give these books. But I think they can be enjoyed at just about any age, really.
Yeah, and I think a few weeks ago, I think we went over Susanna's channel, Den of the Weird. It was Susanna, Paramita. It was someone else I can't remember. Really sorry. Anyway, check it out, and myself. And we were talking about our top 10 series. And I put Dragonlance, like, I think it was number one, which I know is not, like, the literary quality is just not there. But it's a purely subjective thing about the point in time of your life in which you read a book. And I think if you read these books as a teenager, it would be a very different experience if you read them first time in your 30s.
Sure.
But if you read them first time in your formative years, I think they can have a very profound effect on you.
Absolutely. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, with acknowledging the effect that a book or a series had on you, and the effect it had on how you would approach anything else you read in the future.
And it was definitely the gateway, because after that came Lord of the Rings, and then after that came a lot of things. I mean, I still have kept up with the series, so I've got kind of the main internal chronological timeline of the series. I've got Dragons of Summer Flame and the Second Generation and the War of Souls and the Dark Disciple trilogy. I've got them all, so I've carried on with it over time. but I think Legends is definitely the peak, and after that we have a gentle, downward slope. And
Yeah, I did read some of the like the Legends of Yuma stuff, like the ancient history by Richard Knack, and that those are pretty cool.
Yeah, I like those. I got
Yeah,
those too.
and but like you said, I don't think anything. This is the pinnacle. Nothing reached the Legends level of just pure joy in what epic fantasy can be and do. It's
Yeah,
just
I
great.
mean, it's got it all. Like, it's got time travel,
Yep.
and time travel is a dangerous thing, right? But
Yep.
but I think they do it right. I don't find any flaws here. And can we spoil? Can we do a spoiler?
Yes, everybody out there, we both read this book, so there's spoilers galore from this point on if you haven't figured
Yeah.
that out yet.
So the time travel is done really well. I, it's, I think it's probably after Back to the Future, but it's got that element of when you jump back to the present day from the past, you end up in a different timeline. So it's got a similarity there. But you've got that thing where Riesling goes back to the past to defeat Fistandantilus and acquire his power and try to access the realm of the gods. But because, well, we find out, when do we find out that Riesling, in the test to become a wizard, he made this pact with the spirit of Fistandantilus. So he doesn't know whether he has reincarnated into Fistandantilus and he is bound to repeat the mistakes that Fistandantilus made, those centuries ago.
Right.
So you've got that intrigue there that is like, is he doomed to fail, or is he going to rewrite history? I think it's really well done. I think it works.
No, it was utterly engrossing. It was utterly fascinating, and that's like speaks to one of the like the themes that you enjoy in the book here is like what is when you make a pact, like through magic, of course, when you make a pact like that, when you're involved with a identity crisis like that, who is responsible for the actions? Who is actually doing them? Was it Fistandantilus or was it Raceland who was pulling that stuff off? So that's pretty cool stuff. And that was like, what are some of the other themes that might have jumped out at you?
So for me, I think I can't remember the quote, but when eventually when Caramon and accidentally Tas are sent to the past to try to prevent Riesling, there's a comment about they're hoping to save a soul, but they don't. Yes. But it's not clear. Are they trying to save Riesling, or are they trying to save Caramon? Because obviously, after the events of Chronicles, Caramon is a broken man, and he's got this kind of pathological thing where his validation and his value as an individual comes from the fact that his brother needs him to protect him, look after him, and that's the center of Caramon's life. And when tragically Riesling abandons him at the end of Chronicles, Caramon's reasons to be his existence is turned upside down. He cannot cope with it. He becomes an alcoholic. He becomes obese. He cannot even love his wife. And are we trying to save Riesling and turn him away from the path of evil? Or in the process, are we trying to save Caramon and get him back to a place where he can love himself for who he is and not what he does for other people, seeking or needing that validation from somewhere? So I think that the themes are really deep and really profound. And I don't think I've read many books where the themes are so personal. Lord of the Rings is very much good and evil. Yeah, you got a bit of a redemption story with Boromir. But I think in these books, the personal themes are really deep. And I think that there's no one talking about Legends in BookTube, or very few people do. It's seen as, Dragonlance, young adult stuff. And I think they're missing a great story.
No, you brought up a great point with that, with Caramon basically having that need to he grew up his whole life watching out for Raceland. That was what he did. He watched out for his brother. And when, yeah, like you said, his brother basically abandoned him at the end of Chronicles. Uh, he fell apart, and his wife actually kicked him out, told him to go do it, go get him.
Yeah.
And no, and you're right. That's very. It was about saving Karaman. Actually, if you read the note that Hickman and Weiss put at the end of the last book, they basically said that it was about saving Karaman's soul. Raistlin was already doomed. You know,
Yeah.
he took on the evil alignment, and he took on those aspects of his own free will, and he was already doomed. And so there was no saving Raistlin. It was about saving Karaman. And very, yeah, very deep stuff, because it really deals with that relationship between two brothers who were that close, that needful of each other, really, and how the breaking apart of them can lead to a lot of tragic stuff, not just personally, but in an epic sense,
Yeah.
fantasy sense, you know.
And as well, the tragedy of Raistlin is the tragedy of people that are willing to give everything in their lives to chase that one dream.
Yeah.
That they just so desire. People that are willing to forgo family, friends,
Yeah.
whatever, to follow that one passion that ultimately, that thing which you love destroys you, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Contains that ultimate pursuit of power, which is always just a big hubris, you know, uh, problem that it leads to downfall eventually, you know.
But again, it doesn't necessarily have to be power. It could be that person that is chasing, the dream to become a professional athlete and is willing to do whatever it takes to get there. And you may make it, Lance Armstrong, in order to become the greatest cyclist in the world, he was willing to, break all the rules, take all the drugs, put your body at risk just to be that thing. Or maybe people that don't make it, and they just fall apart in the process of chasing that dream. Maybe, I don't know, that boxer that gets concussion and you never hear about because they never made it past the amateur rankings or whatever it is, and they put everything on the line for that one thing. So like I said, I don't think, I mean, I'm not the best person in the world, but I think the themes are so deep and so vast in this trilogy that I don't think I've ever read anything that rich. Or maybe I'm just, again, I've read it as a teenager and I just got it on a pedestal in my head.
Yeah, that could be the case. It's been a long time since I read it too, but that's, the fact that we're still remembering these things from these books means it meant something. It means it's stuck with us, and that's pretty powerful in its own right. That we were able to absorb that out of these books at such a young age and have it still resonate with us today.
Yeah. Like I said, I talk a lot about Legends in particular. I think even though the books sold by the millions, I think there is a lack in recognition for what the deeper meaning of the books are, because they didn't need to write Legends. The Rock Chronicles, that's what pushed the product. And then they had this character Raistlin that it's not a Margaret Weiss or Tracy Hickman creation. That character was a pre-generated character for the campaign setting that they were playtesting. And it was Terry Phillips, who was an employee of TSR, that he was assigned the role of Raistlin, and he gave it a personality. And in game, he spoke with that whispering voice that characterizes Raistlin, and he forced everyone during the game to listen to him because he would just whisper and make everyone pay attention to him. So it's not even a Weiss and Hickman creation, but they realized that they had something there, and they took that character and run with him.
Yeah, and Raislin's a fascinating character because of those character flaws. You know,
Mm-hmm.
he has a weak constitution. He's sick all the time, and um, you know, it gets in the way of being a hero. You know,
Yeah,
so it really speaks to the depths of the character that you can make it a whole series, a whole trilogy based around this guy.
absolutely. And then we could talk a lot as well about the relationship with the priestess, with Chrysania, who loves Riesling when clearly he's an abusive, he's just using her.
Hmm.
But she can't see what everyone else is telling her. And, again, how many people do we know these days that are in relationships that are no good for them? But there's this desire to, oh, I can be the one that changes him or her. And, you know, people sometimes they just get so emotionally invested in a relationship that they try to make it work when again it's doomed to fail. And I think Chrysania represents that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, right there.
That's right. That's right. That's
And
right.
yeah, and there's yeah, she's a character filled with great compassion for the person that she's interested in, and yeah, you're right. She wants to save him. She wants to change him and try to get him to see the good and what have you. And but there's also that underlying theme that Raceland has some points of compassion himself when it comes to the some of the minor characters, like
Mm-hmm.
the I think it was Bupu, the name, the
That's
Gully
right.
Dwarf,
Yep.
and of course Tasselhoff, the Kender, and that's when you get all these little hints that, you know, Raceland still has humanity. You know, when he's dealing with these creatures, these people who are who are what's the word I'm looking for? They're suppressed. You know, and
Yes. But like I don't think, yeah, I think none of us maybe, I don't know. I don't think necessarily everyone is totally devoid of humanity, no matter how far down that path you've gone. Um, but obviously, I haven't met many people like that. But
yeah, but when you have a wizard who's looking to face off against the Queen of Darkness and go down his evil path, I think it's important to show those moments of humanity so
mm-hmm.
you can relate to the character rather than just him being a complete evil
Yeah,
evil genius, you know.
yeah. Well, like I said, I think the books they are fantastic. Even the redemption of Carmon, how he rebuilds himself physically and mentally, and in the journey, he finds worth by himself when he's the leader of the armies. He,
Mm,
he unites he unites the barbarians and the dwarves, isn't it? And he becomes
I
a
believe so.
great general, and that's got nothing to do with Riesling. So in that journey, he can come back home and and be a good husband for Tika, and just be content with himself.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, sorry, go on.
No, no, that's right. Yeah, no, you nailed it. Yeah, no, so it's a great character arc as well for Caramon. He goes through this whole redemption arc really for himself,
That's right.
and eventually in trying to help and stop Raceland at the same time, he's going through all these changes and going through all this realization and um, you know, like a apotheosis of some sort to become a better person.
I think because I was just thinking just now as we talk about it. This is something I hadn't thought about before. All the characters, maybe with one exception that I'll speak about in a minute, become better people at the end of the journey. So Chrysania eventually, because she's got her own arc, isn't it, where the religious people, the priests, they are so intent on being good that they become prideful and they
Hmm.
become obnoxious, isn't it? They are so devoted to the good cause that they actually become, in a way, sort of evil because they know better. And at the end of the books, she's blinded, and that's metaphorically when she can see,
Right.
The sort of the light, so to speak. Rising eventually redeems himself and saves his brother. Caramon saves himself. Tasselhoff, more so in Legends than in Chronicles, he represents that death of innocence, isn't it? The Kandar are the happy-go-lucky, they don't know fear. And in Legend, well, obviously, we still have some of his friends die in Chronicles, more so in Legends when Rising just, with the snap of a finger kills the gnome that they find in the abyss. And I think the Tasselhoff that comes out the other side of Legends is definitely kind of that child that has now seen the harsh side of life, and is an adult, and is different from every other Kender.
Yeah, that's right. That's actually a good point, because that's the last thing you said. He ends up being different from every other Kender, and he definitely goes through that loss of innocence. And this is all like coming back to me now that you're saying this now. So I'm like, wow, yeah. And Tasselhoff's journey is kind of sad compared to how the rest of it comes out, because he definitely comes out like almost emotionally beat up and a changed person because of that.
Yeah, which is why I hate what they did with Tasselhoff after Dragons of Summer Flame. Yeah, have you read beyond that point?
I read Dragons of Summer Flame, but I read other stuff, but I don't remember what happened with Tasselhoff after that.
So Tasselhoff dies a hero's death in Dragons of Summer Flame.
I remember that. You're right. Yeah.
Right. Okay. What happens is, in whatever the next trilogy is, I think it's the War of Souls. In this series, there's always a comedic relief. There's always that comedic character.
Yeah, sure.
But Tasselhoff is dead. So what do you think they did?
They brought him back.
Yes.
Yes. Actually, I remember a friend of mine complaining about that.
And you bring Tasselhoff back so you can have a character that makes the jokes and makes light of the situation, whereas Tasselhoff wasn't that character anymore. And I hated that. That's why, for me, like I said, Legends is the pinnacle. Second Generation and Summer Flame are still enjoyable, but it should have finished there, or they should have gone in a different direction, because I think it's a betrayal of the character.
Right. Well, so
sorry, so, tangential conversation there.
That means that means that people should stick with this one.
Yes,
this is what we're recommending.
So. Absolutely. And I think it's a good. You don't need Second Generation and Dragons of Summer Flame. I think Chronicles and Legends work very well together, because you know that if you enjoy Chronicles, Legends is better, and yes. it's a perfectly good and valid endpoint to the series and these characters.
Yeah. Well, I was always wondering if you needed Chronicles to read Legends, but you just kind of proved the point that you don't.
I mean, obviously you are missing a whole deal of background on the characters.
Yeah. Right.
But it's a self-contained story.
Right.
So ignorant me that didn't know anything about it, once I read Chronicles, I wasn't gutted that I didn't have that information before. You knew that there was some, these characters knew each other from before, but you even had that in Chronicles, because in Chronicles, the opening pages are them meeting again after 5 years of being separated. So even in Chronicles, you know that these characters all have a background together, that you're not. And it gets referenced, when they go sailing in the Crystal Lake and they capsize the boat and Flint nearly drowns, and there are little things that get referenced through Chronicles. So I guess you could say the same about Legends. So I don't think it's necessary, but I would recommend people read Chronicles first. and then Legends.
Yeah, but this, but do you feel it's a case of, like in some series, you have people recommending, oh, just get through the first couple books and then it gets great? Is it one of those, or is it you will enjoy Chronicles before you get to Legends?
Okay. No, like I think Chronicles, again, it didn't need Legends to sell by the millions.
That's
but
right.
maybe it tapped into that thing about it is. I think they were the first novels to be based around Dungeons and Dragons, the game, because Forgotten
Yeah.
Realms came later.
Yeah.
The first book in the Icewind Dale trilogy came out in '88. So I think Dragonlance was the first novelization of any D&D world.
The Moonshade trilogy was right after the first Dragonlance.
That's right.
These Dragonlance books, and then the Drizzt books. Yeah.
But Chronicles is a more, straight up fantasy, epic, fun, dragons, wars, wizards, fireballs. It's just a fun ride. You're not expecting anything much from that. But if you enjoy that, you get that plus with Legends. Because with Legends, you still got the dragons, you got the flying citadels, you got the armies, you've got time travel, you got gods fighting. It's just plus all the deep themes that we've talked about. So you don't have to. I wouldn't consider reading Chronicles as having to plow through to get to the good stuff at all.
Excellent. Yeah. Especially if you do love dragons and you love epic fantasy, that has the Chronicles has the classic D&D party. It's right there. So if you at all have an affinity for stuff like that, you're gonna like those anyways.
I suspect though that the modern fantasy reader doesn't actually know what fantasy looks like. People like Sanderson, Robert Jordan to an extent, possibly Robin Hobb, they've largely taken the fantasy out of fantasy. Certainly Abercrombie, there's nothing fantastical about the First Law universe.
Martin,
there again, it's not the. I mean, there's still dragons, there's still White Walkers, but it's not the focus of the novels. Wheel of Time, again, there's not a great deal of. It's a fantasy world, but there's not a great deal of fantasy as such. And Sanderson, I've only read Mistborn, but once again, I don't think it's the core of the books. Whereas something like Dragonlance, it's on the title, Dragon and Lance, like you're getting the whole thing.
That's interesting. That's an interesting point. It seems like the modern trend was to move away from the obvious fantasy, where these were obviously, right on your face fantasy, and epic fantasy in that style. That the Chronicles did kind of echo Lord of the Rings a little bit, with its quests and all that stuff.
Yep.
So that's, I guess classic 80s fantasy,
Yeah. It's a classic good versus evil tale.
Yep. Yeah. And then, but then, like you said, Legends goes a little deeper. It goes into character deeper. It goes into some themes on relationship deeper. And I think it's a very rewarding series.
I wish more people read it, particularly people that are younger than us that may have grown up with A Song of Ice and Fire or Abercrombie. It's like, no, like there's fantasy, like there is that you've read, and then there is fantasy with a capital F.
Capital F, I like that.
All
right, so that covers like why other people should read this. That's why, right there. Yeah.
And obviously, if you are put off by dragons, orcs, and trolls and gnomes and others, then this is not for you, isn't it?
Sure.
If you think
Right.
that's childish, then you're going to encounter that here. But
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things I enjoy about these books also is the little illustrations at the beginning of the chapters.
how have I got those?
I think these are great, and I wish more books did that because I really like it.
Check
I
it
really
out.
like the
I
illustration.
just realized I've opened. Well, I'll tell you as well as a curiosity. They completely butchered the names of the books in Spanish, so they're not called The Time of the Twins. It's got nothing to do with twins. The word twins doesn't exist in any of the three titles. And this is how long ago I bought them. The price is still written in pencil in pesetas in the top right corner of the first page. So that's before the euro was a thing.
Oh,
so there you go. Yeah. Book one, that sort of that serpentine thing there.
Yep. Yeah, every chapter had its own little illustration.
Forgot about those.
You get the Fizzban's hat there, and
oh yeah, I may not have actually. This edition may not have all of that.
Yeah, it was so cool, and yeah, these were $3.95 when they first came out.
So I've got this one marked 890 pesetas. A euro, when the conversion was done, was 166. So whatever 890 divided by 166 is, so probably about 5 euros in today's money.
Okay, that makes sense.
There you go.
That makes sense. Cool.
Weird stuff, man.
Yeah, very strange. And what was the other question I had? Oh yeah, so when you were playing, did you ever play in the Dragonlance world, D&D?
We actually played the Chronicles campaign with one of my gaming group. Nobody, so except for me, no one else had read Chronicles. So the DM just played us the campaign. We were the heroes of the lands.
No kidding.
And we went through the bits, and because they launched, that was when TSR was launching the world boxes.
Yes, yeah.
So you had the massive map of Kryn, and there was a particular rule, I remember this, for the world of Dragonlance, where they had the 3 moons, and if you were the DM, you had to keep track of the movement of the 3 moons, because that affected the wizard's spells and stuff like that. So I played in Dragonlance, but we played the Chronicles campaign.
Nice. Yeah, I DM'd some Dragonlance stuff with some of the other modules that came out later that had to deal with the other side of the world there, where the Minotaurs were or whatever. So, but yeah, that was fun stuff. Like you said, the 2nd edition Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, it's a deeply flawed game, but my God, did I spend hours doing that? But mention him. Richard Knack has got a whole trilogy set on the Minotaur Islands.
Yeah, I read that one. Yeah,
I reached out to him to try to interview him, but he very politely declined. He says he doesn't do interviews. He was happy to answer my questions through email, but he didn't want to have a conversation. So it's like, oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. I liked his stuff. I read his whole Dragon Realm series. He has his own series, fantasy series, and it was entertaining stuff.
I would love to speak to someone that worked at TSR in the 80s. Like to see what working in that environment was like. I've tried to track down a few people, but it's very difficult.
Yeah.
and Weiss and Hickman charge silly money for appearing in conventions and stuff like that. So we'll see.
Cool. All right. Any final words about Dragonlance Legends?
Oh God, I don't think I sound like a fanboy, isn't it? Okay, let's see. What? Come on, let's try to be marginally even keeled. What would you criticize about these 3 books?
What would I? It's been so long, so it's hard to think of something specific to criticize as far as the story goes and what have you. Um, uh, we didn't even talk about Lord Soth.
No.
I love Lord Soth. He was so cool.
Yeah. Well, like Dragonlance has got this whole underbelly that then they develop in the Ravenloft campaign setting and the Ravenloft novels. I've got a couple of them. So they did a whole run of books based in that vampire zombies underbelly of Dungeons and Dragons.
And Death Knight.
Yeah, that's right.
What would I criticize? I'm trying to.
The writing style?
I mean, the writing style is simple. It's not, you know, it's not going to, you know, be studied in any academic spheres or what have you like that. It is what it is, and it's but they really get into characters pretty deeply, and they give you all you need to really latch on to these characters and care about them and want to know more about them. And the world and the situations they come up with are very inventive. They really go all out and just throw in the magical playbook at you, like all the stuff you would want for fantasy and magic is in there.
Because the novels aren't that long, right? Around
about 400 pages each.
Yeah, 130 each.
Yeah.
But the world feels massive. The world building is massive. Do you think that someone that doesn't have a background in Dungeons and Dragons or Chronicles, like the magic system here with the white robes, the red robes, the black robes, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Is there a lot that is taken for granted, or is it reasonably well explained that a newcomer to this world can just dive into it?
I think it's pretty well explained if you've read Chronicles and then Legends. I think you can ascertain, like the whole red. Was it black and white?
White, red, black. Yeah.
White, red, black. Yeah. That whole system is pretty well explained. I mean, that's because it gets into the Dungeons and Dragons alignments, you know, spheres, and they you know, obviously black is evil and white's good and red's neutral, and that's that part of it. I think that's explained pretty well. I don't think you'd have to be familiar with Dungeons and Dragons in order to know that part of it.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking, and then you've got all these gods, but again, the gods are also aligned with good, neutral, and evil. So, like I said, I think it just goes to show that you can build a massive world and not have to. One thing I like, we're trying to criticize it. One thing I like is that there is no exhibition dump pages. You know, with some fantasy novels these days.
Yeah. Okay. I wasn't sure about that because it's been so long, but
right.
Yeah.
But with some books these days, you are very aware when you are reading the explanation, the info dump part of the novel at the beginning. Usually, it's like, okay, I need to get through this to understand. I don't think that happens here, but I was trying to criticize it.
Yeah, I don't think it happens in these specific 3 novels, the Legends, because they did they might have done a lot of that in Chronicles prior to it, and so I definitely don't think it happens in Legends. I think Legends is definitely character focused, and with, you know, just the drive of Raceland basically being the drive of the story.
And it just goes to show as well that in order to do really good, you know, in-depth character themes, you don't have to do without the fantasy and the magic.
Right.
All those things are just accessories or background.
You can incorporate it right into that. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I find it very hard to find anything to criticize it because I think the story is tight all the elements. There's nothing loose there. There's no plot holes, I think, because even the time trial is done relatively well, and there's no thinking, why couldn't you do this instead or something like that.
Yeah. No, I think we spent more time criticizing everything else around it besides these ones.
Yeah.
But because I really think they could have just stopped there and then been a perfect ending, but but that's okay. Yeah,
well, well, apparently the new trilogy that is set to be finished soon is meant to retcon some of the events here, so I don't think I even want to touch it. But
retcon, oh my!
Apparently, that's from what I've read a little bit. Dragons of Deceit is called the new trilogy, or it's the first book in the trilogy, and I think there's a bit of time travel, and it might reckon some of the stuff that happens. So I'm very, very reluctant to see that happen.
Yeah, that's not good, but that's okay. We can always go back and read these.
Yeah, I've done it multiple times. Like when I found this at the train station, I was reading a different book, and I found that, so I just picked it up, and I made the mistake of reading the first page, and then it was like, okay, whatever book I'm reading now, you gotta wait. I have to go through again.
Nice, outstanding. All right, so you guys all got the rundown of what we like about Legends here, and I hope you guys didn't mind two fanboys gushing about some of our greatest young reads that we had when we were younger and still love today. So Jose, once again, thank you so much for coming on BookThink.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure, Jared. Thank you very much for letting me gush about Dragonlance.
Anytime. All right. And with that said, as I always say, be good to each other, and thank you.
Bye.